GM. GM. Today's lesson, I'm going to talk about backtesting, but it applies to other areas of life too. I had a really good question from one of my captains who's saying, you should talk about the importance of being full of energy, being well rested, well refreshed when you start to do backtesting or you do any, intense trading exercise. And it's really underlooked. It's actually something that I've noticed in myself in the past and hadn't actually really fully articulated it in any of my lessons. And so what he was talking about was if he's tired and he's backtesting, he can often think that the system is not good. Whereas if you was backtesting the exact same system but full of energy or well refreshed, the system will work well. And that might seem, you might think, how can that be? Like a system's either good or it's not. Not really. Like for any of you who've been through backtesting, you'll understand that it's not that simple to find every trade that meets your rules. It's not that simple to apply the rules every single time. It's not that simple to just even go through it, right? There's a certain amount of cognitive load that gets put upon you to do backtesting. And I know this for sure. Anytime that or not any time, but several times that I've been really tired or just mentally not there for whatever reason, I was not sharp that day and I tried to do backtesting, I would either have a shit session of it or I would test something and it's hard to describe. It just wouldn't come together. Right? I couldn't get going. I couldn't get into the flow of it. I couldn't spot the trades. The trades that I did spot, I was sort of confused. I was using a couple of rules that were quite complex rules. And I was just like staring at the screen with brain fog. And I was like, fuck this system. But it's not fuck the system. It's I shouldn't have been doing that task if my brain wasn't up to it. If I wasn't fully refreshed and mentally ready to go in and do that deep work, I shouldn't do it. And oftentimes if you're stuck, and this goes for everything, like a lot of things, especially computer-based work, any cognitively stressful work where you're working on a list, you're working through a list, you're working on any, could be a deadline for your business, it could be a deadline for your schoolwork, it could be backtesting, it could be live trading, setups, it could be sales. Something that's very intellectually demanding and heavy on your brain, you need to be refreshed. And quite often you can just stop, go to sleep, or take the night off, or go do something else that's not so stimulating to your brain, and come back the next day refreshed. And it's like literally night and day. I've looked at systems in the evening when I was super tired, had a long day, I wanted to do some backtesting, and I looked at the system and I started and I did 10 of them and it was just a fucking slog and it was a grind, and I was like, this system seems shit. It's hard to get fucking setups on it. It's confusing. Maybe the rules aren't right. And then I would go to sleep, wake up the next day, wake up fresh, look at it first thing, and it just made sense. And it turned out the system was fine. The rules I set were right. The trades were not that difficult to find. So I think that's something that's really important to be aware of. And that goes, again, in all areas. If you are working in sales and you go into work fucking hungover or super tired or low energy and you have a bunch of shit calls, does that mean you're bad at sales and you should quit sales? No. You weren't there. You weren't mentally ready. You weren't up to the task and you underperformed. Same thing goes in trading. A lot of it comes down to, even in live trading, especially in live trading, if you're a day trader, not every day is the same. A lot of times when people start out trading, they think that the systems are all the same, right? If you have a system, you just sit by the computer screen, you wait for the system to present itself, you wait for a signal, you wait for the candles to do what you need the candles to do, and you enter, you put in your stop loss, put in your take profit, and it just deals with itself. But that's not it. You guys know, every live trader knows. If you're not mentally there, right? If you're not in a good headspace, if you're not well rested, if you're not sharp, That's where decision-making fatigue can set in. And that's where mistakes happen. That's where you miss trades. Like, there's times I've been so tired that I've stared at the screen and just blatantly not seen an entry. Like, I've watched as price did a valid under-over and just not seen it. Because I was just fucking too tired, right? Distracted, thinking about other things, and my mind just wasn't on it. So whether it's backtesting, live trading, sales, your schoolwork, you have to remember that if your brain is working at 30, 40, 50, 60%, you're going to get subpar results. That does not mean the thing you're doing is wrong. It means you're in the wrong state to do it. So it doesn't mean the system is wrong. It means you're probably just tired. Try again tomorrow. It doesn't mean you can't ever trade, but it probably means you shouldn't trade today. It doesn't mean you're going to fail all your school exams. It just means you fucked up today. You were too tired. You maybe messed up this test. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible salesman. It means you shouldn't have picked up the phone today. You probably should have called in sick if you were super tired or super hungover. Or maybe you shouldn't have got fucking hungover in the first place if you've got work. Things like that, right? And if it's, this is then the last part, if it's self-inflicted, you need to change that. If you're constantly tired because you live a bad life, right? You live an unhealthy life. You stay up too late, you eat shit food, you drink too much, you don't get enough sleep, you're staring at screens all night, you're wasting time, you're taking drugs, you're smoking weed, you're doing whatever. If you're constantly in a poor cognitive state because of your own decisions, you need to change that, right? Then, if you've got everything in line and you just, for whatever reason, you have a bad night's sleep, kids keeping you up, whatever, things happen, you've got an early flight, you're under-rested on a certain day, that's fine, that's life. But you have to be able to identify that and understand that on those days, you can't go at full speed, right? You're going to have to take it a bit easier.